Welcome back to another video on Gearsaw Studios, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build this wizard tower. You can see it has a nice gradient filled in with extra blocks here and there, a good entrance with a unique staircase, a fully functional although very vertical interior, and well, it has a bunch of other small things you can do with it. No nether portal, but otherwise, it's a really nice structure. Not necessarily the best for living, but I do have these vines and a good way to do them without much trouble. So without further ado, let's investigate how we'd build this wizard tower. Starting off with our wizard tower, well, we need a foundation. And of course, well, for your foundation, what better thing than, a pretty generic shape that does not resemble the TF2 logo. But anyways, what we need to do from here is one, choose a height. Okay, this is a pretty consistent height. Two, define where the walls of the actual tower will be. Right here, so that way, well, we can have a sunken in entrance. And then the actual tower will go on like this, so that way we actually have interior room. And then we can just quickly define the edges of the tower. Of course, I strongly recommend using an actual sphere generator rather than just relying on what I assume is a sphere. But still, something like that will help a ton. And then once we establish what shape we actually want the tower to be, of course, description will help a lot with the shape, then we need to start making the actual entrance. I was going to use pale oak, but I realized that, well, we should probably stick with stone for now. Just plain untextured stone. The reason being is, although it's going to be a kind of whimsical tower, not like some dark foreboding tower over there, although that one was really good actually, well, we want to start a little bit basic down here, almost a little dark, but then when we go up, we'll make it a bit more colorful. Essentially, start with a four-sided entrance, and then once we have our four-sided entrance, we can remove some of the staircases on some of the sides to replace with windows, stuff like that. Now, with a bit more work done, don't worry about texturing, just the shape. I have now figured out the exact shape the tower is going to take, and it will follow this circle right here. And you can see it's much more mathematically accurate. If you want a larger or smaller tower, feel free to alter the dimensions. And well, now we have an entrance. You can see it's a little small right now. I might change up some of the colors here to keep it a bit more unique. But you can see here, I have blackstone all under this circle. Then I have this entrance here. Notice it's recessed, so that way it's just a little bit deeper in. And then everywhere else, based off of that original shape I made, I kind of just went up. You can see where the door is proportional to these stairs. And then I went up again, made more stairs. So what do you know? You have a nice little thing going on right here. That gives the foundation a little bit of extra, like, girth? I don't know what the right word would be. But you can see how it's not just stick. It actually looks like it has some weight behind it. And that's what we're going for. And then what we can do is our gradient up. Of course, other towers might focus more on the actual shapeage of it, but trust me, gradient towers work really well as well. So what we want to do from here is make a staircase. But of course, well, this is Gearsaw Studios, and you know what I love doing? Overcomplicating things so every video's ended up like one day late. So yes, we need an overcomplicated staircase in order to expand that video time. So let's start off with something easy. We can see these slabs here need to converge into one point. And then we can try it like this. Maybe add a little extra something here. I'll think about it. And then once they converge inward on one spot, then I can use them in order to make one staircase. And then this can be ridden all the way back down. So you can see how you converge stairs together in order to make something a bit more unique. Then you give these things railings and you texture them. If you're using stone, then I recommend using stuff like andesite, smooth stone to texture it. However, in order to fit in with the blackstone, I'll likely be changing it to tough, which works better with more tough. Now, I have this staircase here, and you can see it's now tough, and well, there's a couple of things I have to go over. For one, you can see, well, the staircase is at an angle. The reason why I'm not doing a conventional staircase, this is just building tips. I'm gonna, show you stuff so that way you can become a better builder rather than just a tutorial follower. So right here, we can see how I have it at an angle. And then let's look at my other tower, which is of a very different make. You can see 4 entrances, but they're all, well, converging in on each other. And then let's go over here past some of my older builds that aren't that good to another base with a ridiculous staircase. See what I'm doing here. When I have a normal straight staircase, it gets really boring, even if you can spice it up a lot. Here. Now let's look at a build with a normal staircase. I mean, yeah, it looks pretty good, but, I could do better. And it makes it just appear like a little anticlimactic per se. When you have it at an angle, it makes your build look larger and it shows you put some thought and effort into it. Even if you didn't actually, still. Right here, I had to work a bit in order to make the slabs look good. And you can see how they even get a more extreme incline when I get closer to the ground because the ground kept getting lower and lower as I kept moving. It was very annoying. Well, anyways, stairs aside, we need to do the railings. Just do 2 blocks thick. On the outside, you do a little bit of stair railing. And then for some lighting, what you want to do is wall, block, netherrack, surrounded in spruce trapdoors, fire. Very simple, doesn't have any good or evil connotations because it's just in a vacuum, And then, well, what we need to do from here is texture a little. So, what we can do from here is pull out some stairs and polished tuff. And actually, get yourself some polished tuff stairs as well. Here is how you can texture. Add in some of this, almost like a broken checkerboard pattern. It doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, it's actually better if it's not perfect. And then I get myself some tuff for the slab pieces. And what you can do here as well is provide a little bit of damage to it. Like here, you want it more interesting? Congratulations, it now has a crack in it. Try that for this flooring. And then if you're comfortable with it, try it for the blackstone as well. Even incorporate other weird blocks into it, potentially even the chiseled variants if you're brave enough. Now, you can see this whole pathway here is looking, well, pretty simple. I made 1 block change, and then I textured it, and you can see it adds a lot surprisingly. And now, it's time to move on to the rest of this stuff. For the blackstone, I decided that I'd wait until the tower itself is ready for texturing as well. Since, it's better to work on one task at a time rather than constantly swapping your palette. And then right here, you can see a pot with a flower pot, nothing inside, gray wool, and then I also replaced the bottom block of the door with stripped spruce logs. Notice how I also stuck wool under the pot, and then I have a lily of the valley rather than a dead bush or anything. Because remember, although we're starting dark and foreboding, the whole tower isn't like that. Remember, think full English teacher mode. What hidden things can you figure out based off of this alone so far? Chances are you don't want to think about that, and that's actually just perfectly justified, but, when you use that knowledge, it helps you build a better build. And then from here, what we need to do is we need to establish the other sides. I decided, nah, I ain't doing entrances on the other sides because they're differing terrain. Although I might revisit that, chances are it will be a while, and if I do, it will be something very simplistic. And then for the interior, you can see simple walls all around. Then I have some polished chiseled tough bricks. I always get that name wrong. And then we're going to have a building inside here. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We still have the rest of the tower to build, and because the width of the tower, you're not going to be able to use a lot of it for the actual building. I don't really recommend this as your starter base, but depending on how you build the top, you could totally do it anyways. And then, now it's time to teach you a new skill, gradients. And then we just place a few blocks up, something like this. Actually, now we have some blocks, and then we need to go a shade lighter. And the next shade up would be cobbled deep slate. It really depends on how tall you want this tower to be. So let's say 7. And then we progressively go to lighter and lighter tones. Maybe something like stone bricks, or potentially, yeah, that's a little bit too harsh. From here, we'd go to tough. And then after tough, and not tough bricks, then we'd probably go to something like stone bricks or andesite, and so on and so forth. Add these as cylinders. Do not do anything to them yet. Just build the tower to your desired height roughly. Right here, you can see I now have a very simplistic tower. Make sure that the bottom here, where it gets slightly thinner, is consistent on all sides. It's pretty important that you actually do this part because it makes sure that there's a proper transition layer. Because, well, we can't have the whole thing stay the same width, or else the whole building up the bottom thing kind of goes to waste. So anyways, you can see how, well, actually you can't see right now, but how I did all those weird layers. And you know, if you know anything about building or looked at the thumbnail or watched the intro, that's not how you're supposed to build. And I'm completely aware of this. And in reality, if you're really good at building, you don't actually have to do this. But here's the idea. When you have these layers, you want to muddy up the borders. And of course, you want to do it a little bit more jagged than this. But something like this, where you mix in the lower layers blocks into the one above it. And then when you do this, it makes them feel a lot more together rather than just, haha, I swapped my blocks. No, it gives the illusion of height. And when you do that, then it makes your build look cooler. Because, you know, in real life, chances are buildings are going to look pretty much exactly the same all the way up. Because, you know, lighting is not that crazy in real life. But we're in Minecraft, we can do whatever we want. That's why I make bad decisions in this game. But anyways, you can see we have a little bit of mixing in. And then we do this for each layer, including the blackstone onto these deep slate bricks. And then, after we do that, we texture it the same way we did these stairs here. As in, we start mixing in the polished versions of each block. Now, let's say I want to do some deep slate here. Well, I can do that. Go in, start mixing it in, because, well, if you have all perfect bricks, I mean, good job in real life, but in Minecraft, that just looks lazy because, well, everyone does that. Ironically, making a mess in this game is how you make your builds look better, not making them look neat. So, try it. It sounds really dumb when I put it like that, but trust me, it's actually pretty cool. So, mess up your build, make it look kind of weird, maybe a little odd, and then it'll look better. And then, of course, incorporate the stairs and slabs and a few window slits from time to time. It's up to you to decide the floor spacing on this. With that palette change in place, just, you know, quick blackstone to deep slate tiles because blackstone was simply too harsh, I'd say. Well, now we have a bit of texturing going on for the tower. You can see I merged some of the layers together, blended them, then added some polished stuff to them in order to give them a bit more depth. To the very top, there's a calcite layer with snow as its accent. However, it is not complete because I plan on adding a floor that you can actually do anything on. And then we have some smooth basalt acting as a polished block for this layer. However, that's prone to change. I'm not the happiest with it. But you can see how I have them all blended together. I have the polished blocks here. I incorporated some of the normal deep slate into the cobbled deep slate, and from afar it looks really good. Now I probably should address the shining red things in the room. What are the shining red things? And the answer is windows. Yeah, they're just windows. Pretty much. What we want to do is stagger out the windows. If we have windows on every single layer, they're not going to look good. And better yet, we don't need fancy windows. I've done a very similar tower to this before for a survival mode. You know, you can always check out that Let's Play, aka me giving commentary for about 20 minutes about things that probably aren't Minecraft related. And then, well, we have some windows here. We can remove that. Essentially, each window you should be able to fly through, of course in creative mode. If you can do it with an elytra, good for you, but not exactly what we're looking for. We want to go it right through. So here, we want window. And pretty much the reason why I'm doing it like this is so that way, well, you can have nice windows, as many as you can without it getting monotonous. And what do you know? You have some windows now. Don't bother about decorating them yet though, because, well, I might include a secondary wall inside and the windows might not be terribly useful. Stuff like that. However, the very top ones will be decorated later. Now, we just have to figure out what to do with the interior. But it's important to note that, well, look at how thin it is. Especially if we add in a wall, you can see how this is going to get not very useful. Essentially, we should focus our efforts into making a good top floor and not trying to put everything into this tower, because otherwise we're just going to run out of room and get weird cluttered floors. Right here, I have some interior work done. You can see very basic amenities, nothing too serious on this first floor. Then, empty space because I wanted to go to the first window floor. Notice I can also use wool here because there's no ceiling to see it from. 1 block thick floors. And then, notice ceiling also has a unique design. It's not unique for every floor though. But anyways, this is our womb room. The reason why it's not our bedroom is simply because mobs can get a little too close, depending on how tall your foundation is. And yeah, that's been an issue for me in some worlds. Then, we have chests all around, cauldron. Hidden in here, we do have some waterlogged stairs, so that way we can always refill the cauldron. And then, go up a floor, bedroom, now that it's in safe distance. Right here, alternating between wild and sentry, although it's sentry wild, still resin. And then unique enchanting setup, perfectly viable surprisingly. Go up another floor, we have brewing. You can use some bone meal to make the glow berries appear. And then right here, we have more chests. And then hidden inside here, mangrove roots. And that's how we're going to have water. Then in here, it's another room, smithing table, things like that. Nothing too serious besides the anvils. Have a block under it. And yeah, you can't see it because it's ceiling. And then up here I did not do anything yet. Which means we have a lot of the interior done. Although the top floor is going to be our storage. And then right here, I did a big window. The reason why I have this is because it looks really good below the penultimate floor. And well, we just copy this like this. Of course, you have to build it manually most of the time. And then have it set to not destroy everything. And what do you know? Once you have all this in, it'll look really interesting. Because, well, you'll have nice windows right before your top floor. And what do you know? We have a tower. However, a lot of this still looks pretty bare. We have a gradient, but it's not quite enough. You can add little things like flower pots, kind of like here where I have these little baskets. You can see what I'm doing with that. Well, we need to do a little bit better. And this is where a new strategy I've recently decided I should try comes in. What if you're to put some plants on the build? And this will help a lot once you have the happy ghast, which is going to be added in a few weeks. And then we can kind of swirl it around like that. Maybe add another branch split off of this. And then we fill it up by adding more leaves. You can see how they reconverge and then they'll end right around here. And once that's all full, then it'll look a lot better. Make sure that you don't have wide swaths completely uncovered though, because that would get really boring. And try avoiding covering any windows, because you know, the windows are there for a reason. You can make it go to the ground as well. Once you fill it in, then it will appear a lot better. Now, you can see I added a bit of overgrowth, a little bit more complex than you'd see on a lot of builds. And it's also my first time doing this kind of concept. Anyways, here's how you do it. First, of course, if you're in 1.21.6, please use a happy ghast. It will save you a lot of time. Otherwise, what you do is you make a pathway up all over the build of spruce leaves only. Then you go back through the build and add in a bunch of birch leaves. These two leaves are not affected by biome type, and they're decently dark, which makes them good choices. Azalea could also work, but this build is a little bit too moody for something so vibrant. And then you have your foliage itself, and from there, you add in some purple terracotta. Personally, I think purple is a little too monotonous, so if you want to, you can probably mix in some magenta as well, which makes it a bit more noticeable because while it's a brighter shade, a bit more saturated, stuff like that. And what do you know? You now have some overgrowth on your tower, and it's actually not as hard as you'd think. I mean, I've been scared of the concept for a long time, but you know, I'm doing it and I found out it's quite easy. I recommend trying the same. Now, with our windows and our overgrowth, this build is nearly complete. All we need to do is go to the top floor, and the top floor is a little bit larger, and we need to, well, design around that. I was thinking something almost like Congress looking, maybe with a bunch of pillars, although that might not necessarily work. It's up to you whether you want to have an open top or something a bit more square-like, where you have it shaped like that one over there, because you know that's a very different style of tower. If you want to do something like that, feel free to attempt it, but I'm going to go for something a little bit more standard. Right here, you can see, well, I have the top, and there's a little bit of an issue. Where are the windows? It's just black concrete. Well, the answer is windows are kind of boring, and also we're just putting chests inside there. Who wants to go up to this tower and like, wow, we have some very beautiful stuff, and then see the chest monster? Nobody, well, maybe some people, but most people don't. Which means we're not gonna do that. We're just gonna have black concrete. We can make our own walls on the inside if need be. Then what we need to do is add the roof from here, which means yay, more structure gel and more reasons why to not update to the next update, because I kind of want wildflowers, but I like this mod more. But anyways, we have that, and now we have what appears to be a very large chest piece, and unfortunately that's not exactly what we're doing today. So we have an issue here. Now we can try using purple concrete for this, and it's a pretty vibrant block, but I think it fits if we do it right. But where are the stairs? And you know, you're kind of used to stairs in builds, but well, there isn't a stair variant. Well, the answer is we're not going to use stairs on this roof. Essentially, we're going to try doing a pointed roof from here halfway to here, and we're going to use no stairs. Use purple concrete and then mix in some other blocks, such as magenta. Of course, you can use different blocks. The palette screen would help you at the beginning, stuff like that. But you really want to try a tall roof, because if there's anything that says wizard tower, it's tall tower. Right here, you can see the top is now in place, and it's pretty complex, so I'm gonna have to explain. Also, real quick, just gotta make a very small change. Much better. Yeah, you need to worry about lighting in this. And right here you can see it's a lot of purple, and well, it's just purple, nothing really to think about. There is a lot of complex patterns in this and some extra manual bits at the top. It's too complex to go over, but essentially try doing things like maybe every 3 blocks, or place a random pattern and add in wool under certain blocks or X blocks away. Think like that. Then you'll be able to make a much more interesting roof. Then, in order to light everything up in here, I kind of did a little bit of a cheesy thing. And then right here, I added some stairs that actually are hidden. And you can see right here, lanterns. Turning on some night vision for this, you can see on the inside, well, we just have little pieces. You can't actually see the lanterns from the outside. The angle necessary would really be like this. And granted, I don't think many people are looking directly up at the build from this precise angle. And yeah, it's not even visible from the bottom. It's barely a few pixels, and some angles don't even support it. Some devices probably couldn't support it because of resolution. So pretty much, these lights are hidden. And yeah, end rod at the top. We have some windows, we have these vines, and the only thing left to do is 1, some optional texturing. Maybe go down to the bottom and add some stairs into these deep slate tiles, and 2, add the storage room. Spiral staircase in the middle, chests on the walls, And you might want to add a new kind of wall in here so that way it can fit everything. And that's pretty much it. With the roof now in place, you can see at night the end rod is very visible. Well, I have completed the top floor, and here it is. Nothing too spectacular, basic interior design, but we have a bunch of chests here. This can be your bulk storage, and then we can go up for more stuff. And there's a bunch of interesting things here. Since these corner blocks on the black outside are not visible, I was able to replace them with furnaces. If you were to do the exact shape of my build, and then, well, just made it exactly how I did, then you'd be able to fit it. If you built yours differently, no big deal, you can make it into the floor. Then, we have some candles floating around. You have to place a block below them first, but they can hover. And then, above here, you can see I have a bunch of black stained glass, and the inside of the roof has been lined with black concrete. Between each layer is a bunch of end rods, and at the top is a frog light, specifically the purple one, pearlescent. And well, yeah, this is the build. We have a nice cozy storage room up here, a less cozy storage room down here, and then we can go through each of these floors, and well, they're pretty nice, but we also have a very beautiful build from the outside. Is it the most practical build? No, it really isn't. If you're here for specifically a long-term base, this isn't the one, but it looks really nice and fits into a lot of medieval settings. While it might be a little too lighthearted if you're trying to go for evil wizard vibes in case you might want to try the Dark Tower tutorial, it still fits in with more medieval things. Like right here, I have a sawmill. Well, it looks pretty in place. You could build a bunch of stuff between this and it would fit in really well. And hopefully this helped you. And with that, it's the end of today's tutorial. If you enjoyed this tutorial, well, please like and subscribe, it really helps me out. Either way, enjoy the rest of your day. Gearsaw out.